Let's talk about Honoka, otherwise known as the Queen of Free-to-Plays. But first, make sure if you haven't already done so, you smash that like button and subscribe because I do daily King of Fighters Allstar content, and let's get into it. Before we get into the footage of SS Honoka in action, I figured that we should go ahead and take a look at her kit and give you guys a little bit of background as to why this character is performing the way that she is. So first up here, SS Honoka is going to be a yellow defensive type unit with a leadership ability that increases all fighters' attack by 20% and their active skill damage by 30%. This leadership ability, while not terrible, is largely something that you can ignore because most of the time you are going to be using better leaders overall. When it comes to her typing, a yellow defensive type, or a defensive type in general, is typically going to bring along with it the assumption that while this character can probably take some hits, she may not be dealing the best damage in the world, and while that might be the case for most defensive type units, this one is going to be a special case because Honoka is a attack type that is basically masquerading as a defense type, and you'll see why when we get to the footage. Now, as far as her cores are concerned, SS Honoka is going to boast a 30% power charge rate increase on her cores, as well as an increase to her damage by 18% when she lands a critical hit. She is also going to have a 20% burn attack damage increase with a 3.2% critical rate increase. When you talk about her exclusive cores, she's going to increase her own active skill damage dealt to burned enemies by 90%, with a 20% chance to deal additional damage equal to 700% of her attack upon landing an attack, guard included, on a cooldown of 15 seconds. On her Pro Wrestling Fanatic core, she is going to increase attack by 5% and penetration by 300 for 5 seconds for each attack, and this stacks up to 5. She's also going to gain an additional 20% of power when her combo count is 10 or above on a cooldown of 10 seconds, and then of course she is also going to have the Dead or Alive exclusive core that all of these characters will share. So as you can see from her cores, this character is geared towards doing two things. She's trying to deal a ton of damage as well as landing a lot of crits, and that is something that is going to come up quite a bit in this footage, as you will see. One big thing to keep in mind here, and something that I do feel like is worth noting, is she does have that core that is going to improve her penetration by 300 for 5 seconds upon landing a successful attack that stacks up to 5. This is something that you actually see on characters such as Lady Zero in the past, and more recently the yellow version of Meliodas. While Meliodas doesn't necessarily hit very hard, this is something that does cause Lady Zero to do as much damage as she does, so this is another reason why this character is going to be outputting so much damage over a long fight, and is worth noting. Next up, moving on to the skills, we are going to start off with the S1, which is going to be Exploding Fist EX. Exploding Fist EX is going to give super armor for 3 seconds when using it, as well as applying Infernal Flame to the target for 7 seconds upon landing a successful attack. For those of you who are unaware of what Infernal Flame is, it is going to be a tier 2 upgraded version of Burn that deals burn damage equal to 30% of attack every 1 second, while also decreasing critical rate by 80%. And defense by 30%. Now this is also going to be an interrupt, which is a big reason as to why, in my opinion, this is going to be her best overall skill, and one that you will see in this footage is quite abusable in PVE, specifically in PVAI. Now moving on to Flying Body Scissors EX, which is the S2, she is going to gain Hyper Armor, which is super armor and damage immunity for 3 seconds, with a 70% chance to reset the cooldowns when using a skill on a cooldown of 15 seconds, and this is also going to be an interrupt. So both of her first 2 skills are going to be interrupts, and this one here is going to boast the chance to reset all of your cooldowns, as well as giving you hyper armor. So as you can see here, being that she is going to have 2 interrupts to start off her kit, one that is going to give super armor and another that is going to give hyper armor, it's pretty easy to see where this character is going to have a lot of sustain over a long period of time. Now moving on finally to her S3. The S3 is going to increase her attack by 35% for 7 seconds, as well as dealing burn damage equal to 135% of attack to all enemies upon landing an attack on a burned target, and also stuns the target for 3 seconds upon landing a skill, guard included. So the big thing to keep in mind here is while this is going to give you that flat 35% increase to your overall attack, the big part of this skill is going to be that deals burn damage equal to 135% of attack to all enemies upon landing an attack on a burned target, because this is going to be something that is going to help her out a ton when it comes to mobbing, specifically in things such as time attack. So overall, a really good skill, and her skills overall are very strong. Now, one other thing that is worth noting on her kit, and we'll need to go ahead and move over to her finisher here, and we'll take a look at it, is going to be that there is going to be an additional effect on her 3PG card that increases critical rate by 5%, as well as critical damage by 20% for 10 seconds whenever you use it. This is worth noting because if you remember back to her cores, this character is going to want to be dealing a lot of crits, and this is also going to be something that is going to come up here momentarily when we talk about cards. But overall, those are going to be the skills for Honoka, and as you can see after we've taken a look at these, this character, while being a defensive type unit, is going to buck the trend of a lot of those characters that we've seen in the past that boast that typing, and instead this character is going to be wanting to deal a ton of damage. Now, the final couple of points that I do want to make about this character before we get into the footage is going to be as it pertains to cards and her stones. I've seen a lot of people asking about what stones you should be using on this character, and this tends to be a topic of conversation whenever we have a character that is going to be a defensive type unit. For those of you who are unaware, I'm using all of the attack stones for the Dead or Alive collaboration because in my opinion, these stones, especially on their secondary effects, are just going to be the best possible option. Now, a lot of people always question whether or not they should be using things such as defensive type stones or attack type stones on their defensive type characters. As a rule of thumb, typically attack type stones are going to be the best way to go unless you are looking at a character that just has a ton of defense to attack conversion, which this character does not have, so your best bet is to go with attack stones. And one big thing to keep in mind with this character is you will be able to do a ton of damage with her without the new Dead or Alive set. However, this new set, being that it is going to be crit based, is going to be the best possible set for her. And if you really want to hit the types of numbers that you're going to see in this video and get the type of performance that you're going to see in this video, you're probably going to want this set, because this set is going to make a marked difference in her performance. And while maybe not being something that is an absolute must-have for her, I do think that if you are going to be going for these Dead or Alive characters, this card set is as close to a must-have as humanly possible, and one that I highly recommend to all of you. So with all of that being said, as you guys can see, this is the reasons why this character is going to be able to perform so well in these runs. But let's go ahead and get into the footage and take a look at her in action. The first thing that I want to talk about here is going to be SS Honoka against Immortals. So the current Immortal that we have right now is going to be Immortal Mose, Immortal Moth, whatever you want to call him. And basically what you're seeing here is I'm using my geese as my leader. So this Honoka is not going to be taking advantage of any type of leadership ability. However, it is worth noting that this Immortal is going to be weak to yellow type fighters, so she does technically have the elemental advantage against him. However, being the fact that she does not have the leadership skill benefiting her as well, I figure that's a bit of a wash, but it does make a difference. Now, big thing to keep in mind with this character, one of the downsides to her is going to be the fact that she doesn't necessarily have the longest finishers in the world, but she is able to charge them very quickly. So as we've talked about other characters in the past as it pertains to Immortals, typically something that you're really going to want to look for when it comes to characters against Immortals is going to be their ability not only to charge their own finishers, but also their ability to have finishers that are going to have very long animations. So typically when you would look at this character, you would think to yourself that while she would be suited for this type of mode just based on the fact that she is going to be able to take a lot of hits, and therefore she isn't going to be ground down as much as your attack type units would be in these types of runs. As you can see from this run here, the fact that she doesn't necessarily have long finishers does not hold hold her back at all. And again, she is not taking advantage of any type of leadership ability that is going to be boosting her overall power gain, which is another big bonus here and something that is worth noting as well, because the fact that she is able to keep the clock stopped as well as she can, especially alongside two of the premier immortal type units, this character is definitely going to be one that, while she isn't perfected for this type of mode, is going to be a major player in my opinion. And it all comes down to the fact that she is able to output so much damage, and you'll be able to kind of tell from this run, just based on how quickly we are able to finish it with this first team using her, that she is going to be very valuable for this type of mode. And when it comes to Immortals, this is a very important dungeon because Immortals are going to have a ton of rubies locked behind them. So whenever you can get a character for free like this one that is going to give you so many benefits in this mode, it is something that you want to take note of and something that you definitely want to take advantage of. So overall, that is going to be SS Honoka against Immortals. She is definitely going to be worth your while and worth trying out. Now, I get the feeling that the first thing that people are going to think of when they think of this character as far as what they are hoping for is for a character that is going to be a free unit that is going to help them out in a considerable way against Guild Raid, because Guild Raid is going to be one of the most rewarding dungeons in the entire game. And I'm happy to report that this character, while she may not have a ton of versatility in Guild Raid, being the fact that she is going to be burn based, is going to be extremely powerful against Guild Raid Omega Rugal, thanks to the fact that she does have burn apps on her kit. As you can see from this footage, this character is doing way more damage than any defensive type unit should be, and is the hardest hitting defensive type unit in the entire game. But not only that, this is also going to be one of the hardest hitting units in the game, period. So as you can see here, we are doing insane amounts of damage on Guild Raid Hard Solo using her, and some things that are going to come up whenever you're doing these types of runs with her, and you'll notice right off the bat, is her overall shield shred isn't necessarily the best. However, being the fact that she is able to output so much damage thanks to the fact that she's able to use so many crits in her kit, this character is still going to be able to chunk through the shield regardless of that fact and do a fantastic job in solos. Therefore, being the fact that she is so good on solos, you can pretty much assume that if you use her on a full team comp where you're swapping her in and out, maybe you even decide that you want to use the Neo Tengu option card at that point, then this character is going to be hitting like an absolute truck and be able to donate a ton to your Guild Raid runs. Now, of course, we have plenty of options for Guild Raid Hard. Burn type characters are types that we get quite a bit here in this game, and we aren't going to be for options there. But if you are wanting a character that is basically going to be the next best thing to SS Kyo, if you missed out on him, she isn't going to be able to hit the numbers he's going to be able to hit, but she's still going to be able to give him a run for his money, and as a defensive type unit, that is downright impressive. Now, one big thing that I did notice when I was doing these runs and practicing with her is you're basically going to want to go ahead and try to spam your finishers as much as possible and rotate through them until you can get to your awakening spam, at which point on your awakening spam you're just going to want to go ahead and do what you would normally do, which is just try to get through as many rotations of your skills as possible with the shield down. And whenever you do that, you'll be able to tell from this footage that that is really where she shines in this mode. The amount of damage that she's able to lay into this boss when the shield is down, when she's on her awakening rotation, is pretty amazing, and it's really nice that she has that double interrupt to lead off her kit, because being the fact that she can interrupt on her S1 as well as her S2 and give herself super and hyper armor, it is very tough for these bosses to be able to catch her and juggle her. Therefore, you're going to have a pretty easy time getting through these runs. Like I previously mentioned, however, keep in mind that her shield shred isn't necessarily the best, so that being the case, you're just going to want to rely on the fact that she can build up her meter so well and try to get through as many finishers as possible on your way to your awakening rotations. But really the big thing is just to keep in mind that you'll need to go ahead and make sure that you are very timely with your S1s whenever you cast those. You'll want to be careful whenever Guild Raid Omega Rugal especially decides that he's going to get a tummy ache, so that way you don't waste your S1, because that is going to be the only reliable way that she can apply burn. While she can do burn damage on some of her other skills, you are not going to be able to apply the dot outside of the S1, so that's something to keep in mind. But even with these things working against her, this character should not be performing this strong as a defensive type unit. By all rights, this character should not be able to do the amount of damage that she's doing in this run, but as you can see, she is fully capable, and this character is a whole lot of fun to play against Omega Rugal with, so I highly recommend you try her out, because this character is going to be very easy to get one keys with and guild raid hard. Now, as we had alluded to when we talked about the kit breakdown, SS Honoka is going to be a fantastic mobber. As you can see from the footage here, she is going to be able to group mobs very well with all of her skills, thanks to the fact that she has very generous XY axis on her skills, and she also is going to have that effect on her S3 that is going to deal that additional 135% of her attack to all enemies on the field. So therefore, this character is going to be very strong in things such as time attack, something that a ton of these Dead or Alive characters have in common. But overall, this character is going to just be a very versatile and extremely good free-to-play option. And while the fact that we are going to be dealing with that Carnival event where we are going to need to get those extra memories through that system, which is very unfortunate, I am going to give you guys a few tips here at the end of the video as it pertains to that, to hopefully give you guys a little bit of help trying to acquire the memories for this character, because I know a lot of people are going to want to build her. But finally, I do want to talk a little bit about PVAI, especially with Absolute War being out now. This is becoming increasingly important, but I am happy to report that this character is going to be just based when it comes to these types of modes. The S1 alone is a big enough reason to make this character top tier for PVAI, because you're basically just going to be able to lead off with the S1, being that it's also an interrupt and so quick, you can pretty much just one punch half the roster as it sits. So overall, I couldn't recommend her any more highly here for these modes. So there you have it, you guys. That is going to be SS Honoka in a nutshell. Overall, an extremely good character, one of the highest damage dealers in the entire game currently, and definitely going to be the best overall free option that we have had with these collaborations so far, but she does have a few downsides. The biggest ones being the fact that her finishers overall are going to be on the short side, so that means that I do think that she is going to lack a lot of versatility against a ton of different Immortals down the road, but time will tell. Her overall damage output might make up for it. And another thing to keep in mind is that she only really has that one application of burn on the S1, and being the fact that that is going to be the case, she is going to lack the versatility that you would like to see against some of these more desirable difficulties in Guild Raid, such as Lunatic and Expert and so on and so forth, against either of the current Guild Raid bosses. So really right now, she's probably going to be sequestered to Guild Raid Hard mode, which isn't necessarily the toughest mode in the world, and we do, as I mentioned earlier, have a lot of options for burn characters. But all of that being said, this character is overall extremely powerful, and one that I do think that you should try to build as high as you possibly can in the time that we have with the current Carnival. But that being said, talking about the Carnival, there are a few tips that I want to give you guys, because I have heard a lot of people out there asking questions on how they can get points towards this mileage so that they can eke out as many memories as possible. And there are a few things that I've noticed people have overlooked, so I want to go ahead and put them here at the end of the video to hopefully help you guys out in case you didn't know some of these. So the first tip that I want to go over is going to be the Hall of Elements. So for those of you who are unaware, you can gain mileage towards this Carnival for acquiring memories any sort of way. So if you go into the Hall of Elements for your daily clears and then go down to redeeming those boxes, once you do that, you will get mileage towards the Carnival for your Honoka memories, and that is going to be the first tip and something you want to pay attention to. The other thing that you can do conversely from there is you can go in and open up your your fighter summon tickets, and all of your fighter summon tickets are going to count towards your mileage as well. So all you need to do is go ahead and redeem those. That makes these extremely useful, and there are a lot of different ways that you can acquire these tickets throughout the game. So just make sure that you try to acquire as many of those as possible, as you should already be doing on a normal basis, even outside of this carnival, but those will also help count towards it. Another thing that you can do is go into your Team Relay exchange shop, and you can go ahead and pick up your weekly 2000 clone memory, and once you do that, that's an easy 900 towards your mileage. Another thing that you can do is you can go into the Hall of Elements exchange shop if you're in a pinch, and you can go ahead and pick up some of the memories here. Once you do that, that is another good way to get some extra points towards your mileage. Another way of doing this, and the way that I used, was going to be through the combine functions. So for those of you who are unaware or might be new, if you go into your roster and go to the memory then combine function, you can go in here and you can redeem these memories for more memories, which are going to be your generic memories, but these also are going to count towards your mileage as well. So it's an easy way to get some extra points that way. And then finally, the last couple of things I want to go over is going to be making invitations. So you can go in and make the gold or the purple invitations, and they are going to count towards your overall mileage for the carnival. As you'll see here, for a gold one, you're going to get 150, and then if we make a purple one, we are going to notice that we are going to be able to get quite a bit more through this method, and this is something that I did in order to finish mine off for the last couple of memories, because as you can see, once we go ahead and exchange this, we are going to end up with 1500 towards our mileage. And that is going to do it for today's video, you guys. I hope you all found it informative as always. If you did, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. But I appreciate all of you for watching, and until tomorrow's video, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Continue.